It's tempting to preface this by saying that Marvel Studios' upcoming Ms. Marvel almost certainly isn't meant for our age group, which is to say anybody above 10 years old. And yet we do have to pause because Marvel seems to think 10 is the average age of its entire fan base these days, and so it could well be that this is meant for us after all, in which case it would be really quite tragic. But assuming that it is, or at least that it might be, where does one begin with it after the trailer dropped on Tuesday? Well, it's not quite enough to say that it looks appalling, though it does, and it's not in the so bad it's brilliant Batwoman sense either, but given it's not in our top 200 list of things we're looking forward to on the television coming up, I guess that's forgivable. Rather, I think the thing to dread about it is the reaction, and then the reaction to the reaction. We've had it all before, after all. The setup is exactly the same. Marvel casts a diverse female character, makes that character shit in all the most objectionable ways, and then when fans point out how terribly written that character is, the Republic of Boko Haram's Rapid Response Force would accuse those fans of hating women and brown people. Rinse and repeat. And it's really quite tiresome at this point. I can just about find the old excitement, the old indignant outrage sometimes, but I for one have reached the stage now where my instinctive reaction to all this is to pour a large glass and sit back indolently swilling scotch with a wry smile, watching the world conflagrate all over again. And you just know this is what will happen. You even get the sense from the trailer that Marvel expects it to happen. It might even be inviting it on. After all, it's seen fit to attach at least 2 juicy maggots as bait on the line, so to speak, one of which is so on the nose it actually hurts. So, what have we got to look forward to? Well, the titular Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, played by Iman Vellani, is a brown girl from Jersey City, and no, woke scolds, before you accuse me of racializing it, that's how she describes herself. It's important enough to her to be in the trailer. Apparently it's not usually brown girls from Jersey City who save the world, she says. I mean, no, not specifically, but then again, it's not usually me who saves the world, or my demographic either. Like, there aren't very many superheroes even in the MCU, and there's a lot of them in the MCU, but in the grand scheme of things, no one population can look at the Avengers and say I'm overrepresented, really, can they? Marvel's not short on popular and colourful characters anyway, is it? We have the Falcon, who is now Captain America, we have War Machine, Black Panther, the entire population of Wakanda. Diversity is uniquely our strength, apparently. Red people are represented by Vision, green people have Hulk, blue people have Nebula. Representation is more than skin deep. Psychotic people have Scarlet Witch, people with severe personality disorders have Carol Danvers. We crypto faggots have Groot, who is, before you complain, literally a massive bundle of sticks, hence the terminology there. Kamala Khan's special claim to fame is as Marvel's first Muslim headline character. The trailer makes sure to show us that. And that's honestly quite good, or rather important qualification. It could be quite good. One of the biggest pull factors of this lower, or at any rate younger tier of Marvel heroes is, in fact, their diverse and human backgrounds. One of the great missed opportunities with Kate Bishop in Hawkeye was in giving her the stereotypical rebel girl from rich, dysfunctional family type upbringing that's just so standard across so much of our media. But the likes of Spider-Man and Miles Morales, and potentially Ms. Marvel, add something vital and necessary, a rootedness in the actual experience of ordinary Americans. It's what can, what could, what sometimes does, make them relatable, and therefore popular. But all this is merely potential with Ms. Marvel. You would have to fulfill that potential, you would have to play it very well. You could do great things with your first Muslim hero. Or you could sap that background of all its richness in order to indulge in the usual kind of bumper sticker gesture politic that's designed to get a reaction from that part of the fanbase, which is to say most of the fanbase, the writers really resent having to service. Given what we see from the rest of the trailer, I would be willing to place money on that being the route they've chosen to take. I don't know a huge amount about the comics side of things, though I gather several attempts have been made to get this character and her arc off the ground, and each of them has disappeared without trace. The clip here is from Comics by Perch, who I trust knows a lot more about this and how these things work than I do. Link in the description. On the TV side, we know, at least there have reportedly been, extensive reshoots. Not to mention, the series has been twice delayed, and that doesn't exactly instill confidence in a smooth ride going forward. Speaking of confidence, though, Kamala Khan certainly doesn't lack any of it. In fact, she seems to have a superabundance of it, and you're kind of torn in the opening scene of the trailer, because on the one hand, the teacher or counselor talks in the tone of voice you imagine everyone uses in the writers' rooms at Marvel. But on the other hand, you're fucking sick by now of especially every new female character, adopting that same kind of unearned, unjustified, holier-than-thou superiority. Oh, by the way, what are the odds of this teacher getting sued under the new Florida law? Honestly, though, wouldn't it be far better, more realistic, and more relatable to have her as a sullen kid who knows she's being patronized, but who doesn't feel like she has the confidence or the authority to call it out? You know, the experience that countless kids actually have and go through every day, rather than the unimpeachable and always, I note, unpunishable smugness almost all strong female characters come pre-packaged with these days. Did I say these days? Fuck me, I'm getting old. I've mentioned there are two massive giveaways as to the tone and the opinion of this series, and we've touched on one of them, the almost certainly mishandled racialization of the show. And by the way, if you do think colour is in any way a determinant of her success or otherwise, do please explain to me why she'd be doing so much better if her heritage were Indian rather than Pakistani. Racists are famously really hot on the difference between Indians, Pakistanis and Bangladeshis. They are famous for their attention to detail. The other big hint we get is in the trailer's second scene. Yeah, they really did take that brief Washington psychodrama that occurred, I think, last year, when the entirety of the corporate press decided that putting the stress on the wrong syllable of Kamala Harris's name was racist, and they've turned that into a character moment in the fucking trailer for this series. Could you get a clearer advert of your politics than by taking a side in that entirely confected row this long after it happened? Taking a side and putting it in your trailer? In case there are any severely developmentally retarded people watching, people who genuinely believe that a subtle mispronunciation is in fact evidence of a deep and unapologetic racism, or else if there are partisans on the other side of this culture war watching who think it'd be mighty convenient to pretend that that is true, it really, really isn't. Most Western languages with any kind of Latin root rely heavily on iambs for their rhythm. Little stress, followed by big stress. It's most prominent in Italian for obvious reasons, which is what makes that language sound, well, like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's the stress pattern, and it's the one which is basically the undergirding foundational pattern of most Western language. Sometimes it's trochees and the stress pattern there is inverted, it's strong stress followed by little stress, so da-da-da-da-da-da. But very much less often than both of those is, I don't remember the technical term for three equally stressed syllables, and it turns out we were all supposed to have known, however, that that is exactly how Kamala Harris's name is made up. And I'm pretty sure I've broken this rule in the course of this review. It's not Kamala, da-da-da, which is iambic, and therefore the thing most people assumed it was. It's Kamala, three stresses. Anyway, they throw this into the trailer, and I know it's going to sound shocking, but minority groups within a host nation whose language doesn't share very much of a root with the language of the host nation are liable to have their names mispronounced in this way. Not because of racism, but because it's just not familiar. The structure is alien to the structure of the language in the host nation. Hell, you should hear me try and speak French. My mouth just does not work that way at all. Anyway, if Kamala Khan, I did it again, if Kamala Khan's, oh, she could do it, it's easy with her, you can just do it with four, Kamala Khan. If Kamala Khan's self-confident, sassy chirpiness doesn't take a substantial hit quite soon in this show's run, she is going to be a truly insufferable character, which would make her the perfect tool for cramming down whatever thing the writers are supporting this week, because they like being insufferable while they do that. The idea of actually swaying people to their side is alien to them. Preaching to the converted is always an insufferable enterprise. The rest of the trailer, though, is pretty unremarkable. Quirky comic style, probable teenage romance angst, boy issues, clumsy teenage main character navigates stock set of coming-of-age issues, learns to master powers, becomes superhero, the end. Though I gather they have actually changed her powers. In this series, it seems she gets given a bracelet and then bam, all sorted. So much character and world building avoided, how very, very convenient. It kind of put me in mind of Trailblazer, of Daniel Kibblesmith's hilarious New Warriors. Is that even out? Did that go anywhere, or has that just been consigned to hell from this point onwards, or at least some other kind of fire? I think it's been burned, hasn't it? Anyway, she gets her powers from a magical backpack, kind of like Dora the Explorer, who's made some very, very poor life choices. Again, it is highly unlikely I'll watch this show, unless it does turn out to be a la Batwoman so bad it's hilarious. But I'm sure we'll have to hear about it, and that's the reason I'm doing this video, because when it bombs, as it almost certainly will, then once again we already know who they'll blame and how they'll blame them. And yeah, it's bad for fans. Nobody deserves to be slandered and traduced by some ideological cult with real significant problems with mental insecurity. But it's also bad for the people and causes writers of shows like this pretend they care about. And I say pretend because all they're really interested in is scoring points with the club by hitting all the right notes, themes, and buzzwords. But they're making it much, much more difficult for new writers to debut new gay characters, Muslim characters, and whatever else, because the industry has led fans to suspect that any move in this direction must be because the writers and or the studio want to hammer home some new shiny woke message. I've done a video specifically about this. The link should be on screen now, looking specifically at the problem of turning established straight comic book characters gay, and how that's doing so much damage. I'm all for new gay characters. I think gay representation is important. I'm part-time gay myself. I can completely understand why people want more representation. It can be a really good thing, but there's representation done properly, i.e. new characters with genuine character progression, genuinely good, well-written stories, who can come up and be liked just as any other established character has, the same arc that any other character has been on. We've seen this with Arcane, so the idea that people just object to it because a character is diverse or because a character is gay is nonsense. Arcane, I believe, features some fairly prominent diverse and queer-ish characters, if you must use that insufferable Q word. But the problem is the woke are a cancer on true representation because they corrupt everything. They see division as their aim, not writing good stories. They view fan alienation as success. They're not actually interested in the characters they create or the ones they increasingly reshape. They're only interested in the political uses to which they can be put. And hell, maybe that's already happened. Maybe I'm the victim of it after a fashion. Maybe Ms. Marvel is actually going to be a really good series, but I've been turned off it prematurely by the fact that Marvel's fucked up pretty much every other franchise it's got its hands on over the last almost, well, should we say half a decade and be generous to them? But from the trailer, I think it's just far more likely that the main problem with Ms. Marvel will be that it's shit. But, hell, at least I tried and failed not to like The Weeknd's Blinding Lights again, so I got something out of the trailer at the very least. We shall watch this one with very little interest.